it was election season, and we had one of those special election things going on where, you know, while you were voting on the mayor or what have you, there were special elections to choose from as well. And we had some, I don't know, weird special election thing that they wanted to add some circuit court case to a docket, and apparently one of the people's names involved in this, their last name was Lockett. Alright, and so people had been putting up signs in their yards and on the street that said, "Put Lockett on the docket." Alright, and I don't really know what that means or whatever, but it's, whatever, it is what it is type of thing. Just something that exists. Except then DJ Khaled came to vote, and I was sitting there in line waiting for my turn, and then DJ Khaled walks in and he just starts yelling, and he says, "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." And everybody was like, "What?" And kind of like looked over at the door of the elementary school where we were voting. Looked over, like, "What?" And DJ Khaled, he walked in, and the door closed behind him, and it was like real loud, just like jong jong, when the door closed behind him. And he said, "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." And I was like, I don't know what the hell. Like, why is he yelling that? And one of the people who was at, assigned to work at the voting place, whatever the hell it's called, the poll, was like, "Welcome, sir, welcome to vote." And he just looked him like square in the eye with just the deadest eyeballs you've ever seen. They were like a dead fish's eyes, and he looked with his dead fish eyes directly into the eyes of this poll worker, and he said, "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket," like that. And they kind of were like, "Okay," And then again he said it, this time a little more reserved, but still semi-aggressive. "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." And so the person was like, "Okay, well, here's the thing, sir. That's a special election that you can vote on when you get in here and you start." And like they're trying to explain what this is, And DJ Khaled just, "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." He says it again. "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." And they were just like trying their best, And they were like, "Okay, when you vote, there's going to be a question that's asked, would you want to put case number such and such, Lockett v. State of Tennessee, on the docket?" And you just select yes, that you want to do that. "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." Tell him to put Lockett on the docket. And so the person is like now like visibly like confused, and they're like looking at other poll workers, and they're just kind of like shrugging, and their eyes are like wide open, like, I don't know what to say to this man at this point. And then he said it again, "Tell him to put Lockett on the docket." And the poll worker was like, "I physically can't do that for you." They were trying to explain it like, I can't be the one who, fills in stuff on your ballot. I'm not allowed to do that. You have to tell him to put Lockett on the docket. We're going to tell him to put Lockett on the docket. Hey, everybody, tell him to put Lockett on the docket. And that went on for a while. until he eventually went into his voting booth, and like he drew the curtain, you know, and he kind of like stuck his head out of it, like gripping the curtain tight. He like poked his head back out of the curtain and like looked around just to make sure that like no one was peeking to see what he was gonna, you know, put on his ballot. But then he just yelled again, tell him to put Lockett on the docket. And you know, everybody was like, Jesus. But it seems like it's almost done, right? So we were like, okay, well, at least he's in there and he's voting now, and hopefully this is almost finished. And then he comes out and he says, tell him to shout out the whole government. Tell him to shout out the whole government. And the person's like, sir, please, you know, you can't be yelling in here, DJ Khaled. And he said, tell him to shout out the whole government. And they kind of like nodded, you know. This was a different person, by the way, than the first poll worker. This is a different poll worker that I'm talking about this time. And, you know, she was a little more no nonsense or whatever. And she was like, they know. And he just kept saying it. Tell him to shout out the whole government. And he kind of stopped for a minute, and he was like, he started addressing us, but he was addressing us in a way where it felt like he thought we had all just gathered there for him, you know? Like he thought it was like a concert for him. He thought everyone there was just there so that, because he was going to be there. He addressed us in that kind of way. And he said, I want to thank all y'all and give a shout out to the whole election. And he was like, thank y'all. And at first, the lady thought maybe he was thanking, you know, the poll workers for, like, you know, being there and being poll workers, which is like, you know, that's a fine thing. You know, and it's a normal thing for her to have assumed he was doing. But that would have been more normal than what was actually happening. Was he was just saying to everyone there, tell him to shout out the whole government. And, like, what does that even mean? You know? But he was like giving an award speech, almost. He was like, I want to thank all y'all for coming out here. Every day we elect the government, and it's the power. And don't ever forget your power. They don't want us to have it. Tell them to shout out the whole government. And they're like, no, everyone has this power. Everyone has this power. We want you to have it. And he said, God did. God did. Tell him to shout out the whole government. And the other person, the first poll worker, was like, yeah, shout out the whole government, like hoping to just like, here, give him what he wants, you know, just. And when he said that, DJ Khaled just started nodding. I mean, like real big nods. And he said, tell him to shout out the whole government. Tell him to shout out the whole government. And the guy was like, yeah, shout out the government. And then he said, tell him to put Lockett on the docket. Tell him to put Lockett on the docket. And God did. And it was just a very awkward election day for me. But I'll never forget it. I'll never forget that. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Saint Riot coming back at you again with another edition of Elden Ring Invasions, coming to you pre-recorded, not live, but the next best thing. And I got a good one here for you today. y'all have been saying. I made some videos. I made a sort of like offhanded comment. I was like, yeah, I don't include a lot of the long invasions because I just feel like they won't make really good content because there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of just nothing happening. But people were like, no, I want you to put long invasions up on your YouTube channel. I want to see long invasions. And so, all right, here you go. Here's a long invasion. Just a bit of, forewarning, I guess. It's not, you don't need a warning. Nothing scary is going to happen. But, just ahead of time, I want to go ahead and tell y'all that I did take like a literal 10-minute segment of this invasion. And I mean, it's like right at 10 minutes. And I fast forwarded it. It plays in fast forward. It goes 8 times as fast as it should, taking a 10-minute segment down to 1 minute and some change. And literally nothing happens. It's just me shooting at them shooting at me, no one doing anything. And it's just spite-based gameplay. And, all that is me just being a petty, spiteful person. And if you think you can, like, wait me out, I will basically accept the challenge of, like, yeah, okay, you think you can wait me out? Wait me out then. Let's see what happens. So, they're going down to where these watchdogs hang out at. And the watchdogs, of course, are statues of cats. I forget the name of this dungeon, but it's in the Mountaintops of Giants. It's one of the 2 dungeons that you can do there. Giants Mountaintop Catacombs. There you go. Well, I see their health bars, and so now I know for sure that they are fighting the cat statues. So I use the Phantom Bloody Finger. I come down here. I'm pretty familiar with this area. You'll notice a lot of my builds have the Watchdog Greatsword on the build. I love that weapon, and this is where I farm it from. I've actually talked about this before. There's a watchdog that respawns at the end of this hallway. They just beat one watchdog, but that's the watchdog that uses the big staff, great hammer staff thing. But at the end of this hallway, there's one that uses a sword. And you'll notice I'm about to run past a Stake of America, and there's all these traps down here. So all these traps and that Stake of America, basically what you want to do is you want to run down here, and you want to try and kill the statue and see if it drops the sword. And if it doesn't, just run back here, trigger one of the traps, and then respawn back at the Stake of America, and then just try again. I would bring the Silver Scarab Talisman. I would bring one of the helmets that increases your arcane, and I would bring silver pickled bird feet. I would bring all of that, because this thing does not have a huge drop rate. Like most of the stuff in this game, its drop rate is pretty small, but it never really takes me too long to get it doing this method. And if you're on PlayStation 5 or PC or the new Xbox, your loading screens are probably pretty trivial, so it's nothing too bad. You just want to run down the hallway, fight the watchdog. If it drops the sword, great. If it doesn't, just die to one of the traps and then try again. But here they are, and there's all these traps, and there's a watchdog at the end of this hallway, and there's a big scary invader, and so they aren't doing anything. And what's so annoying about this is, this is the dumbest possible thing for them to do. Like, from a tactical standpoint, like, this is the dumbest play that you can make. Your best bet, regardless of the skill level of your invader, your best bet is to just rush them down. Alright? And if you have a good invader, they're going to make something happen in that moment. And when they do, they're going to turn the tides, and the 3v1 or the 2v1 is going to turn into, a 1v1 or a 1v2, and if there's enemies nearby or involved, look at that, I'm holding an arrow. Look at that. If there's enemies involved, then, that can drastically swing things in the opposite direction. But still, the fact that there are 3 people and that they can't hit each other, they can't hurt each other, the fact that they can do all that, the odds are ever in their favor, So when co-opers do this, it's so frustrating as an invader because it is literally just sort of like, what are we doing here, And this is what, like, I'm not like this, but this is the reason why you have these invaders who show up just kitted out to kill as soon as possible. And there's, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being kitted out to just run in and destroy somebody. It's just, to me, it's not fun. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to. But equally not fun is this for some people. Now, for me, this is fine. There's worse ways to spend 30 minutes, but if there are people out there and they have a real job, or like they go to school and playing the game and just whatever is how they relax and kill some time, this can get frustrating. And so if they just decide to rush you down with dual cold pikes, or dual vikes, or whatever, if they decide to just do that, that's why they're not going to sit here and waste all their time. And the same is true of co-opers. Co-opers, sometimes you'll see co-opers playing through the game, enjoying it, and then they'll get invaded, and then you'll see one of the phantoms. This happens a lot with like an over-leveled phantom. An over-leveled phantom will see an invader show up and is just like, oh, no, we're not doing that. And the over-leveled phantom just pulls out dual naginatas because they think that's going to like end this quickly. And it probably does against a lot of invaders. But again, I am petty and spiteful, and so I'm not having that. That's not what we're going to be doing. Look at this dummy. Look at this dummy. Bye. GG's. All that time for you to fall down a hole. And that gives me my blue flask back. And that gives this build back its power. This is a Dex Faith build that uses the Black Flame incantations. We've got Black Flame Ritual, the Black Fireball, Black Flame is what it's called, Black Flame Blade, and Noble's Presence. And of course we're using the Godslayer Talisman to cast those spells. I've got all the Black Blade weapon. I'm sorry, not Black Blade, although I do have that one Black Blade. I have all the Black Flame weapons that the nobles use, as well as a Lord Sworn Straight Sword that is Keen infused, so that I can buff it with Black Flame Blade. And yeah, and that's pretty much the build. It's at level 168, and I went to 168 to try and get out of the vortex of the boss fog invasions. Where you invade for 30 times, and 20 of your invasions are people standing in front of the Radigan door, or the Millennia door, or the Moog door, etc., and they just walk and go fight the boss as soon as you invade. I hate that. It's so annoying. So I was like, alright, well, let's go to level 168 and see if we can avoid that a little bit. And you do avoid it. It's much easier to avoid at 168 than it is anywhere between 125 and 150 in my experience. Although it does still happen, it happens far less frequently, that's all I was asking for. It's just, I don't want it to be 20 of my 30 invasions. I don't want it to be 2 of the 3. It's so annoying when that happens. And then your third invasion is like gankers just standing somewhere, like Limgrave or Liurnia, wherever the hell. Just 2 people standing somewhere not doing nothing, you know. That gets frustrating because now you've had 3 invasions where it's like it doesn't feel like anything was really an invasion. It just feels like you had a bunch of nonsense. So yeah, definitely. If you want to try level 169 or 168, you know, definitely go for it. But what I would urge you to do beforehand is make a save file and save your data. And if you don't like 168 or 169, if you feel like it doesn't change things up enough, or you feel it changes things up too much and you don't like it, you can then revert to your old save file. It's very easy to do that on PlayStation. It's very easy to do that on PC. It used to be. I've not done Elden Ring on PC. I've done Dark Souls 3 though, so it was very easy in Dark Souls 3. I imagine it's just as easy on Xbox, although I don't know enough about how to do it. So, but yeah, 169 is a lot of fun, or 168, 169. Either one's fine. They're really fun. And you know, you have all these extra levels to doink around with. And a thing that happens when you start increasing your level above meta level, when you start going into these other brackets, like when you get out of the meta bracket, you have all these extra points now, right? So at this level, it's almost like everyone is an over-leveled phantom, right? This is especially true at level 200. It's almost like everybody's an over-leveled phantom, except you're an over-leveled phantom who understands build making, so you're more efficient with your points, and that starts to become obvious, which is why I often say that level 200 invasions feel like level 30 invasions, except everybody has, you know, 170 more levels. People just aren't putting their stats where they need to put them, and you have so many stats, it's like you have so many chances to make a mistake and basically like not level your vigor, not upgrade a weapon, not upgrade a shield, not upgrade a spell talisman. People just start making these mistakes with their builds at these levels. And now this isn't true all the time. It's not even true the majority of the time, but it is something that you will see and witness if you do try it. You'll see people at level 200 who have like 26 vigor, and it's like, how did you only level that up 26 times? Like, even on accident, you should have leveled it up, you know, more times than that. Like, you should have accidentally picked the right stat. You had 200 opportunities to do it, you know? It's incredible. It's really incredible that they can get it wrong so frequently, so much. But, you know, that's not to say that that's the majority of invasions. Because, you know, it's not. There's a lot of, you know, basically, you're going to see a lot of the same gankers that you saw at 125, 133, 138, whatever. You're going to see a lot of those same gankers at 169. Because that's what level they are. And you're just invading at 125, 133, 138. Because you can invade them when you're that level. But now you're invading them, and you've got an extra 30 levels on your build. And that's an extra 30 levels of flat defense. That's an extra 30 levels of damage, etc. That's an extra 30 levels of spells that you can cast that you couldn't cast before. Now you can cast those spells more frequently. That's extra levels of FP, so that you can cast more spells or use more Ashes of War. And it puts everybody on a more equal footing in regards to invasions. That's all I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about duels, and I'm not saying meta levels should change or anything like that. I'm just saying, you know, for the purposes of invading, you're a meta level and you're invading, and you're like, I'm invading meta level, but you're not really. You're just invading people who are invadable at meta level, including people who are level 170, right? Now you're level 168, you're invading those same people. It's a much different story suddenly. Suddenly, you're doing a lot more damage, and you've got cooler abilities and cooler spells. It's not like a whole new group of players just because you went to 168. You'll see some new players or whatever, but you're going to see a lot of the same gankers that you saw at meta level. You're going to see them at 169 as well. I'll tell you what, you can actually like the Blasphemous Blade. The Blasphemous Blade is almost like a guaranteed. When you see the Blasphemous Blade, you can almost guarantee that the person you're fighting is close to level 200. I don't know why, but the Blasphemous Blade becomes like the most popular weapon in the game around level 200. That's not true. I guess I do know why. It's because it's pretty good. It's a great sword. It's got hyper armor. It does a lot of damage. And it regains health every time an enemy dies. On top of that, Taker's Flame also regains your health. So if you kill 3 enemies with Taker's Flame, you just got 6 heals off 1 attack. That's pretty good, you know? And then if you want to take the Taker's Cameo and pair it up with that, you just got 9 or whatever heals worth of 1 Ash of War. That's pretty wild. So people love it, and when I see it, I just instantly know that like the person I'm fighting is probably close to level 200. The relic sword, whatever it's called, ancient relic sword or whatever, sacred relic sword. That's another one. That's super popular at level 200. When you see that on a phantom, when you're level 60 or 130 and you're invading and you see the sacred relic sword or the blasphemous blade on a phantom, just go ahead and assume that that's a level 200 phantom, because it probably is. They just love those great swords at that level, Look at the stylish black blade. I never use that thing, but it's surprising how often you can hit with it. It hits invaders a lot because we have to dodge 2 and 3 things at the same time. It seems like one of those things that wouldn't hit it would never hit you, an invader, in a one-on-one. But you would be surprised at how often you can hit co-opers with it. But yeah, anyway, bunch of fun invasions, and DJ Khaled. Tell him to put Lockett on the docket. Shout out to the whole government. Later, y'all.